I'm hungry, she whispered. Inside, Sarah Whitmore, billionaire, heiress, and utterly alone, was returning from another empty charity gala. The girl's fragile plea pierced through the glass and steel of her life like a crack, forming in a mirror she could no longer ignore. The night was suffocating, a blanket of cold pressing down on Lily as she stood frozen in front of the towering gates. The mansion loomed behind them, warm and bright, its golden light mocking the icy emptiness of her world. The ache in her stomach was unbearable, sharper than the biting wind that stung her cheeks. But she had no choice. She couldn't move. She couldn't leave. Please. I'm hungry, Lily whispered, barely able to hear her own voice over the gusting wind. Her clothes, threadbare and torn, offered no protection against the chill. Her body, a fragile frame that hadn't known warmth in days, shuddered as she curled into herself for whatever small comfort she could find. The hunger gnawed at her insides, a constant reminder of how little she mattered. No one had stopped for her. No one had cared. Inside, Sarah Whitmore, heir to a fortune and a mansion full of empty rooms, drove through the iron gates with the weight of another lonely evening pressing on her chest. The charity gala she had attended was little more than a performance for a crowd of faceless strangers. She was used to it by now. The polite applause, the forced smiles, the feeling of being disconnected from everything that mattered. As her car rolled smoothly toward the entrance of the mansion, Sarah's thoughts drifted to the emptiness that followed her everywhere. Despite her wealth, despite the sparkling jewels around her neck and the designer clothes that clothed her, she felt like a ghost in her own life. Everyone wanted something from her. But in truth, Sarah had nothing left to give. The gala had only highlighted the hollowness of her existence. When she stepped out of the car and made her way toward the front door, she noticed the girl. Lily stood at the gate, her face pale and drawn, her eyes wide with hunger and fear. The thin coat she wore did nothing to shield her from the cold. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She had seen homeless people on the streets before, but something about this girl, so small, so vulnerable, struck her deeply. Please, I'm hungry, Lily repeated, her voice faint but full of desperation. Sarah stopped in her tracks. Her first instinct was to walk away, to pretend she hadn't heard, to keep her distance as she had always done with the world outside her gated life. But something in the girl's voice, something raw and real, made Sarah hesitate. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at Lily, as if time itself had frozen. The wind howled between them, but the distance that separated their worlds was greater than any storm. Then, as if pulled by some unseen force, Sarah found herself moving toward Lily. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the emptiness that had plagued her for years, the ache inside her that no amount of wealth could fill. Maybe it was the realization that she had become so numb to everything that the pain in the girl's eyes was the first thing to make her feel alive in a long time. "Come inside," Sarah said, her voice softer than she intended. It was an offer she hadn't planned to make. But it slipped from her lips before she could stop it. Lily's eyes widened, her expression a mix of disbelief and relief. She hesitated for a moment, as if unsure whether this kindness was real. But hunger and exhaustion won out, and she took a shaky step toward Sarah. The door to the mansion closed behind them with a soft thud, and Lily found herself inside the warmth of a grand foyer, surrounded by polished marble floors and gilded chandeliers. It was like stepping into another world, one of beauty and wealth, but also one of isolation. Sarah led her into the kitchen, where she quickly prepared a simple meal: soup, fresh bread, and warm milk. To Sarah, it was a normal meal, something she had eaten countless times before. But to Lily, it was more than just food. It was a lifeline. As she sat at the table, eating hungrily, Lily glanced up at Sarah, her mind racing with questions. Who was this woman? Why had she helped her? What was the catch? Sarah watched her, her heart heavy with unspoken thoughts. She knew the girl must have questions, but she couldn't bring herself to answer them. For once, she wasn't sure what the answers were. The silence between them was thick. But for the first time in years, Sarah didn't mind it. There was something about Lily's presence that felt different. Something genuine in a world full of facades. Lily finished her meal and leaned back in her chair, her stomach full for the first time in what felt like forever. She let out a contented sigh, her body finally able to relax. But as she did, a sudden chill ran down her spine. She wasn't sure why, but something in the air had shifted. The mansion, so full of warmth, suddenly felt colder. And then, from the hallway, she heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing through the halls, drawing closer with every passing second. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Her gaze met Sarah's, but the warmth Sarah had shown her moments ago was gone. In its place was something colder, something darker, something Lily couldn't understand. Stay here, Sarah said softly, her voice tight. She rose from the table and turned toward the hallway, her footsteps fading into the distance. Lily remained frozen in place, the tension in the air wrapping around her like a heavy cloak. What was happening? Who was coming? And why did it feel like something was about to change forever? Lily sat alone in the kitchen, the faint echo of Sarah's footsteps fading into the silence of the mansion. The warmth of the meal still lingered in her belly, but a cold unease was creeping in, filling the space around her. She tried to ignore it, tried to remind herself that she was safe now, but something wasn't right. The footsteps hadn't sounded like Sarah's. They had been too heavy, too purposeful. Lily stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the marble floor as she moved toward the door, her heart hammering in her chest. She crept quietly through the dimly lit hallways, the grand house now feeling eerily empty. It was as though the walls themselves were watching her, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. She stopped at the end of the hall, where the sound of voices drifted toward her. One was Sarah's, but the other... It wasn't familiar. Curiosity gnawed at her, but fear held her still. She could only catch bits of the conversation, fragments of words carried by the air. Sarah's tone was sharp now, colder than it had been when they first met. She can't stay here, Sarah. You know the rules. The voice was deep, low, commanding. It sent a shiver down Lily's spine. Rules? We're past rules, Sarah replied, her voice tight. She's a child, Mark. A little girl who's starving. I can't just let her go. Lily's breath hitched in her throat at the mention of her name, and for a moment, she considered retreating. But then, something inside her urged her forward. What was going on? What did this man mean by rules? And why was Sarah, who had seemed so kind, suddenly sounding so distant, so cold? She couldn't hear Mark's reply, but his footsteps grew louder as he moved closer. Lily quickly ducked behind a large vase, the shadows enveloping her. She held her breath, praying she wouldn't be discovered. Moments later, Mark appeared in the hallway, his tall frame silhouetted by the light from the grand staircase. He was older than Sarah, maybe in his late 30s, with dark hair and a stern expression. He didn't look like someone who cared much for the people around him, and the look in his eyes confirmed that he wasn't someone who had ever known true kindness. As Sarah stepped into the hallway, her back straight and her posture stiff, Lily's heart dropped. The warmth she had seen in Sarah's eyes earlier had vanished, replaced by a cold resolve. "This isn't your decision, Mark," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, but filled with an edge that made Lily flinch. "She's here because I chose to bring her." No one else. Mark's face darkened, and he took a step toward her. You're making a mistake. You can't bring someone like her into your life. She's not our responsibility. The words stung Lily more than she expected. Someone like her. The coldness in Mark's voice cut through her, deeper than the hunger, deeper than the pain she had carried with her all these years. For a moment, she thought she might disappear, fade into the shadows where no one could see her. But Sarah stood her ground. I won't let you send her away, Sarah said firmly, her voice carrying a strength Lily had never heard from her before. I won't be like everyone else who looks away. I won't pretend she doesn't exist. Lily couldn't see it, but she could hear the way the silence thickened between them. The way Sarah's words, her defiance, resonated in the still air. She wasn't just standing up for Lily. She was fighting something inside herself. Mark let out a soft laugh, but there was no humor in it. You think you can save her, Sarah? You think you can fix this? She's nothing but a distraction. A child who will only bring more trouble into your life. Sarah's voice faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. I don't need fixing, Mark, and neither does she. We both need a chance. The finality in her words hung in the air as Mark sighed heavily. Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you. Lily watched as Mark turned on his heel and walked away, his footsteps fading into the mansion. The tension in the air was thick, heavy with unspoken thoughts, with history, with things neither of them wanted to face. Sarah remained in the hallway, her shoulders slumped, but her eyes were softer now, filled with something more than just sadness. They were filled with a kind of quiet determination that Lily hadn't seen before. Sarah didn't look back, but she didn't need to. Lily stepped out of the shadows, her heart pounding in her chest. I'm not a distraction, Lily said, her voice trembling but resolute. It was the first time she had spoken up for herself in years, the first time she had dared to say something in the face of someone who had tried to diminish her. Sarah turned slowly, her gaze meeting Lily's with a mixture of surprise and something else, a fleeting vulnerability that quickly vanished. No, you're not, Sarah replied softly, her voice thick with emotion. You're not a distraction. You're a chance for both of us. Lily's breath caught in her throat. The words were simple, but they hit her harder than any kindness had before. It was the first time someone had seen her, not just the hunger, not just the desperation, but her, the person she was. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. She wasn't just the little girl asking for food anymore. She wasn't just a beggar in the cold. She was someone who mattered. But as Sarah turned and motioned for her to follow, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was still looming. A dark presence that had been watching, waiting, just beyond the surface. And deep inside, Lily knew that whatever was to come, it would test everything she had gained. Everything Sarah had tried to build. The next few days passed in a haze of newness for Lily. Every corner of the mansion seemed both unfamiliar and yet strangely comforting. The sprawling hallways, the grand dining room, the vast library. Each room felt like a dream, a world away from the broken streets she had known. But despite the warmth, despite the safety Sarah had promised her, Lily couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something was wrong. Sarah had been distant since that conversation with Mark. She was kind, yes, always offering Lily food, a blanket, or a word of encouragement. But there was something hidden in her eyes, something that lingered, like a shadow that refused to fade. Lily had tried to ignore it. After all, she was here now. She was safe, She was fed, and she no longer had to beg for scraps. Yet as she wandered the mansion, she began to realize that safety came with its own set of rules, unspoken but clear nonetheless. The house was quiet. It was always quiet. Sarah's life, as grand as it appeared, seemed empty. It was a life filled with priceless things, but the one thing Sarah lacked was the one thing Lily needed most: love. It was late in the evening when the tension finally broke. Sarah had come to Lily's room with a tray of fresh fruit and tea, her face more tired than it had been the day before. The shadows under her eyes were deeper, the weight of whatever haunted her life heavier. Lily was sitting by the window, gazing out at the snow that had begun to fall again. It was peaceful, in a way, but there was something suffocating about the stillness of it all. "Sarah?" Lily's voice was soft, but filled with the kind of vulnerability she rarely showed. Sarah turned, startled, as if lost in her thoughts. "Yes, Lily?" she asked, setting the tray down on the small table beside the window. "Why do you help me?" Lily asked, her words spilling out before she could stop them. She had been wondering for days, but tonight it felt like the right moment to ask. "You don't know me. I'm just some hungry girl off the street. You've got everything you could ever need. Why me?" For a long moment, Sarah didn't answer. Her gaze dropped to the tray of fruit, her fingers brushing the edges nervously. Then, finally, she spoke. "Because I see you, Lily. I see you in a way that I haven't seen anyone in years," Sarah said, her voice quieter than usual. "I see how much you've been through, how alone you've been, and I know what that's like. I know what it feels like to be invisible." Lily looked at her, puzzled. "But you're not invisible. You have everything. Everyone knows you. You're Sarah Whitmore. People respect you." Sarah's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Respect? Yes, maybe. But that doesn't mean they see me. Not really. Not for who I am." She paused, looking down at her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. "I grew up with everything I could ever want, Lily. Money, status, a life of luxury. But none of it matters when you're alone. When you realize that no one ever really cares about who you are beneath all the wealth and the expectations." The room was quiet again, but the air between them had shifted. Lily had never thought about Sarah that way. To her, Sarah had always seemed untouchable, unreachable, a figure so high above her that it felt impossible to comprehend. But now, as Sarah spoke, Lily began to understand. She wasn't just a billionaire. She wasn't just an heiress. Sarah was a person, just like Lily, with her own battles, her own pains. "You're not alone anymore," Lily said quietly, her heart aching with something she couldn't quite put into words. Sarah looked up at her, her expression softening, but the sadness in her eyes remained. "Maybe," she whispered. "But I don't know how to fix it, how to fix myself, how to fix what I've broken." Lily wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but she wasn't sure how. She was just a little girl. What could she possibly offer someone like Sarah? But Sarah continued, her voice breaking slightly. "You don't understand, Lily. Mark, he was right about one thing. This is a mess. I thought I could do something good. I thought I could help. But there are things in my life that go deeper than you know. Things that will catch up to us both if I'm not careful." "What things?" Lily asked, her curiosity piqued despite the unease in Sarah's tone. "I don't know how to explain," Sarah said, her hands clenched into fists. "There are people who don't want me helping you. There are things I've done to protect this mansion, to protect everything I've built, and I can't undo them." Lily's heart raced. Who are these people? What have they done to you? Sarah didn't answer immediately. She walked over to the window, staring out at the swirling snow outside, as though the cold might numb the pain inside her. "It's not them I fear, Lily," she finally said, her voice distant. "It's myself. It's what I've let myself become. And you? You can't get caught up in this, not if you want to survive." The words hung in the air like an omen, heavy and dark. But Lily didn't want to hear them. She didn't want to believe that the woman who had offered her a chance, a home, could be so lost, so broken. "I'll survive," Lily said firmly, standing up and walking toward Sarah. "I'm not going anywhere, not now. Not when I have someone who cares about me." Sarah's eyes softened, but a faint shadow of doubt lingered in them. She wasn't sure if she could promise the same. She wasn't sure if she could promise anything at all. "You don't know what you're getting into," Sarah whispered. "But I hope you're right." As the two of them stood there in silence, the sound of the wind outside the only noise between them, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just the beginning of her new life. It was the beginning of a dangerous journey. One that would test both of them in ways they couldn't even begin to understand. The following days passed in a haze of uncertainty. Sarah's words echoed in Lily's mind. "You can't get caught up in this." But Lily refused to believe it. The warmth of the mansion, the food, the sense of safety, it felt too real to let go of. It was more than Lily had ever hoped for, more than she had ever dreamed. But it wasn't just about her. She couldn't ignore the way Sarah's eyes lingered on the horizon, the way she kept to herself more and more. The moments of isolation were becoming more frequent, as though Sarah were slipping further into a darkness that Lily couldn't reach. The mansion, so grand and beautiful, was filled with a suffocating silence that neither of them knew how to break. Sarah had been hiding something. Lily could feel it in the air, in the way Sarah withdrew, as if battling invisible forces that no one else could see. She didn't speak much of her past, and Lily didn't push. Sarah had already shared so much with her, more than anyone ever had. But secrets had a way of revealing themselves when you least expected them. One evening, after dinner, Sarah received a phone call. It was a private conversation, her voice low and tight with tension. Lily had been sitting in the study, reading a book by the fireplace when she heard Sarah's sharp tone through the door. "No, I told you it's too late," Sarah snapped. "She's already here. She's staying." A pause. "I don't care. I won't send her back." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She had never heard Sarah speak like this, so defensive, so defiant. There was a fire in her voice, but it was also laced with fear. And there was something else. Something Lily couldn't place, but it gnawed at her. Her curiosity got the better of her. She stood up quietly, the book forgotten, and approached the door. Her hand hesitated before turning the knob, but the door creaked open just enough for her to see Sarah standing by the phone, her back to her. "Sarah?" Lily called softly, her voice carrying into the tense silence. Sarah froze, her shoulders stiffening before she slowly turned, a mask of calm quickly slipping over her face. She had always been good at hiding her emotions, but Lily could see it now. Something was breaking through. "Lily?" Sarah started, her voice shaky, but she quickly recovered, putting on a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I didn't hear you come in. Is everything okay?" Lily nodded, though her stomach churned with unease. "Who was that?" Sarah's eyes flickered with something. Fear, anger, regret. But it was gone in a flash, replaced by the cold resolve that had become her default. "It was nothing. Just some business. You don't need to worry." Lily didn't buy it. She could see the lie in Sarah's eyes, the tension in her posture. "Sarah, what's going on?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. For a long moment, Sarah didn't answer. She stood there, eyes fixed on the floor, lost in thought. Then, with a deep sigh, she finally looked up at Lily, her face softer than it had been in days. "You're right," Sarah said quietly. "There's something I haven't told you. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Lily's pulse quickened. She had been waiting for this moment, the moment when Sarah would finally open up, finally let her in. But now that it was here, she felt a tight knot form in her chest. "What is it?" Lily asked, her voice trembling with both fear and hope. "I didn't just bring you here out of the goodness of my heart," Sarah began, her words slow, deliberate, as if testing their weight. "There are people who won't let me do this without consequences. People who want to make sure that I stay in line. I've spent my whole life building this empire. But I've done things. I've made decisions that have consequences. And now those consequences are catching up with me." Lily took a cautious step forward, her heart racing. "What do you mean? Who are these people?" Sarah hesitated again, her lips pressed tightly together as if she were choosing her words carefully. "There's a group of investors, people I owe favors to. They've been controlling my life for years, Lily. I thought I could escape them. I thought I could live for myself, make my own decisions. But now they know about you. They know you're here, and they won't let it slide." Lily's mind spun with confusion. "But why? What do they want with me? I'm just a little girl. I don't even know you." "They don't care about that," Sarah cut in, her voice rising, tinged with fear. "They see you as a threat, a weakness, a distraction." "Distraction?" Lily repeated, her voice faltering. "They think if I take care of you, it'll weaken me," Sarah explained. "They'll use you against me. You have no idea how deep this goes, Lily. These people have power, and I don't know how much longer I can protect you from them." Lily felt a cold shiver crawl down her spine. The world she had thought she entered, safe, warm, comforting, was slipping away. The mansion, the food, the kindness Sarah had shown her, it all felt like a fragile bubble about to burst. But you're my chance," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "You're the one who saved me. You can't let them take me away." "I know," Sarah said quietly, her eyes filled with regret. "But I can't fight them alone, Lily. I've spent so long trying to make my own way. But this is bigger than me, and I don't know what will happen next." Lily felt the weight of the moment settle over her. The future, the safety she had known for only a short while, seemed uncertain now, hanging in the balance. As the snow continued to fall outside, the darkness that had once been confined to the mansion's walls crept closer, threatening to consume everything. But for the first time since she had arrived, Lily wasn't afraid. She had Sarah. And for better or worse, they were in this together. The next morning arrived too quickly, its cold light spilling through the mansion's large windows like an unwelcome reminder of the world beyond these walls. Lily sat at the kitchen table, the remnants of breakfast in front of her, untouched. Her mind was too clouded with the conversation from the night before. The weight of Sarah's words hung over her like a dark cloud, threatening to consume her. But Sarah had made it clear, this wasn't just about food and shelter anymore. It was about survival. Lily could feel the tension between them as soon as Sarah entered the room. She was dressed as she always was, elegantly, confidently, but today there was a slight tremor in her step. Her eyes, usually sharp and cold, seemed lost in thought, distant. There was a fire inside Sarah, something fierce and protective, but Lily could see that it was burning low, and the flame was flickering. "I'm sorry," Sarah said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to drag you into this. I thought I could protect you from it. She set a cup of coffee in front of Lily, but her hands trembled as she did. Lily didn't know what to say. She could see how much Sarah was struggling. This wasn't just about protecting her anymore. It was about Sarah facing something she had tried to bury, something she had tried to outrun. But now it had caught up with both of them. I don't want to be a burden, Lily said quietly, her voice small but steady. She had always been used to taking care of herself, used to being the one no one cared about. But here, with Sarah, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of being wanted, a sense of belonging. You're not a burden, Lily, Sarah replied quickly, her voice sharp with emotion. You never have been. She paused, looking out the window, her face tight with the effort of holding back the storm inside. But I don't know if I can keep you safe. Not from them. Lily's heart sank. She knew what Sarah was trying to say, but she didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to lose the only chance she'd ever had. Then we'll fight together, Lily said, her voice growing stronger. We'll figure this out. We can't let them control us. Sarah turned back to her, her eyes searching Lily's face as if looking for something, anything, that would give her the strength she needed. It's not that simple, she said quietly. They have power. They've been pulling the strings of my life for years. I've done things, Lily. Things I can't undo. And I don't want you to be a part of it. But I am a part of it now, Lily said, standing up from the table. She was no longer the frightened little girl who had begged for food in the cold. She was something else now. Something stronger. Something that wasn't going to let Sarah fight this battle alone. There was a long silence between them, broken only by the faint sound of the wind outside. Sarah's gaze never left Lily, as though seeing her for the first time. I don't want you to get hurt, Sarah finally whispered, her voice barely audible. I can't lose you. You won't lose me, Lily said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. For a moment, Sarah didn't speak, her gaze still fixed on Lily. Then, without warning, she crossed the room in a few quick strides, pulling Lily into a tight hug. The embrace was a silent promise, one that Lily could feel deep in her bones. Sarah was not giving up, not without a fight. But there was something else in Sarah's eyes now, something that had been missing before. A glimmer of hope. I'll protect you, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper against Lily's hair. I'll do whatever it takes. As the days passed, Sarah's determination grew. She began making plans, secretive, quiet plans that Lily was only partially aware of. But one thing was certain. Sarah wasn't backing down. The people who had controlled her life for so long had underestimated her, and now they would have to deal with the consequences. But even as Sarah prepared for the storm that was coming, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that they were both running out of time. Late one night, when the mansion was wrapped in silence, and the darkness outside seemed to press against the windows, Lily heard the soft thud of footsteps in the hallway. At first she thought it was just her imagination, but then the door to her room creaked open. Sarah stepped inside, her face tense, her expression unreadable. I've made arrangements, Sarah said quietly, her voice strained. We're leaving. Tonight. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Leaving? Where? There's a place, Sarah replied, her voice low. A safe house. It's the only place I can think of where we'll be out of their reach. We'll be safe there. But, Lily began, but Sarah held up a hand, cutting her off. Lily, this is our only chance. If we stay here, they'll find us. They'll tear everything down. She stepped closer to Lily, her gaze softening. I don't want to drag you into this any further, but I'm not letting them take you from me. Not now. Not ever. Lily nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. This wasn't just about running away. It was about survival. And as much as she had hoped this would be her new beginning, she knew that sometimes survival meant leaving behind everything you thought you knew. As they packed in silence, the air between them heavy with unspoken words, Lily felt a quiet strength settle within her. She had come this far, and now she wasn't going to let anything, or anyone, take her from Sarah. The wind howled outside as the first flakes of snow began to fall. And in that moment, Lily realized that their fight was just beginning. The night air was biting as Sarah and Lily stood by the front door of the mansion, bags packed, the sound of distant sirens and the howling wind the only sounds breaking the silence. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth and safety, now felt like a tomb, its once welcoming walls now oppressive, filled with memories of a life that was slipping through Sarah's fingers. Lily stood beside her, clutching the worn coat Sarah had given her, her breath visible in the cold air. The world outside felt far away, a world of uncertainty and danger. But there was something in the air, something in the way Sarah held herself, that made Lily feel like maybe, just maybe, they could escape this. "We can't be sure they won't follow us," Sarah said, her voice tight with determination. Her eyes were scanning the darkened street, watching for any movement. Her hands were steady, but there was a coldness to her gaze, a resolve that Lily had never seen before. The woman who had once seemed so untouchable now looked like a warrior, ready to fight for everything she had left. "We'll be okay," Lily said, her voice surprisingly steady. She had never known fear like this before, but in Sarah's presence, there was a strange sense of calm that kept her grounded. It was as if Sarah's strength was enough to hold them both up. Sarah turned to face her, her expression softening. "We will be, Lily. But we have to move quickly. No matter what, we can't stop. We can't look back." The two of them slipped through the back gate, moving in the shadows, careful not to draw attention. Lily's heart was pounding in her chest as they walked down the narrow alleyway. The sound of their footsteps seemed too loud, too obvious, but Sarah's presence was like a shield, keeping her safe. They reached the car parked in the shadows. It was an old, inconspicuous vehicle. Nothing too flashy, nothing that would draw attention. Sarah had arranged everything. The keys were in her hand, and she motioned for Lily to get in. Without a word, they both climbed into the back seat, and Sarah started the engine. The low hum of the car providing a momentary comfort in the midst of the chaos. As they drove through the streets, the city lights flickering by in the rearview mirror, Lily couldn't help but feel the weight of what they were doing. They were leaving everything behind: the mansion, the life Sarah had built, the world Lily had briefly stepped into. But more than that, they were leaving behind a life of false security. The mansion, with its gilded walls and empty rooms, had never been home. It had been a prison, just like the streets had been for Lily. Only now, they were free. "Where are we going?" Lily asked after a few moments of silence, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the car. Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror before responding, her eyes momentarily flicking to Lily's reflection. "There's a safe house in the mountains. It's a secluded place. No one knows about it except a few trusted people." She paused, her grip tightening on the steering wheel. "It's the only place where we can be sure no one will find us." The mountains? The thought of being so far from the city, so far from everything, felt strange to Lily. It was a world she didn't know, untouched, hidden. It seemed like a far-off dream, something that was both a relief and a terrifying unknown. As the car sped further from the city, the streets grew quieter, the buildings sparser. The lights of the city began to fade in the distance, and Lily's eyes adjusted to the growing darkness outside. She leaned back in the seat, trying to process everything that had happened, everything she had learned about Sarah, the things Sarah had kept hidden, the way Sarah had chosen to protect her. It wasn't just about escaping anymore. It wasn't just about running away from the people who had controlled Sarah's life. It was about building something new, something stronger. It was about trust and survival. And somewhere, deep inside, Lily felt like this was her chance to make her own decisions, to shape her future, to fight for herself. She glanced at Sarah, who was focused on the road, her eyes hard and determined. Despite everything, Sarah was keeping it together. But Lily could see the flicker of fear in her eyes, the weariness in her face. The weight of their journey was heavy on her. "Sarah," Lily said softly, breaking the silence. "You're not alone in this. I'm with you. We'll make it through." Sarah didn't respond right away, but Lily could see her hand tighten on the wheel. "I know, Lily. And I'm not going to let anything happen to you. I promise." The mountains loomed ahead, their jagged peaks cutting through the dark sky. The road twisted and turned, a winding path that led further and further into the unknown. But as they climbed higher, the tension in the car slowly began to ease. The city was behind them, and with each mile, it felt like they were getting closer to something they could call their own. But the quiet moments didn't last long. The sound of a car engine suddenly broke through the silence, and Lily's heart skipped a beat. A set of headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, growing closer with each passing second. Sarah's grip tightened on the wheel as she glanced over her shoulder. "Stay calm," she muttered, her voice low. "We need to lose them." Lily's pulse quickened. "Who are they? They're not the ones I'm worried about," Sarah said quickly, her voice sharp. "Just stay down." The car behind them drew closer, its headlights blinding in the rear view. Sarah's foot pressed harder on the accelerator, the car speeding up as they left the road behind and took a sharp turn into a narrow mountain pass. The tires screeched as the car jerked around the corner, narrowly avoiding the cliffside. The pursuit had begun. Lily's breath caught in her throat as the other car followed, its engine roaring as it gained on them. The chase through the winding mountain roads was disorienting, the sharp turns and sudden dips threatening to throw them off the road at any moment. The cold night air whipped through the windows, but Sarah's focus never wavered. She was pushing the car to its limits, weaving in and out of the hairpin turns. "We need to get to the next bend," Sarah muttered, her voice tense. "Hold on." Lily clutched the seat, her heart racing as the car jolted over the rough terrain. The headlights of the pursuing car grew ever closer, and Lily knew they didn't have much time. But Sarah was determined, and somehow, Lily believed they could outrun them. They had to. The car roared through the winding mountain pass, the engine screeching under the strain as Sarah pressed the accelerator harder. The world outside blurred in a haze of motion and speed. The headlights behind them cut through the darkness, relentless and unforgiving, like an approaching storm. Lily's heart pounded in her chest, the adrenaline pumping through her veins, but she kept her eyes fixed on Sarah. Despite the chaos, Sarah's expression remained one of focus, her jaw clenched, her hands gripping the steering wheel with a strength that left no room for doubt. She wasn't going to stop. Not now. Not ever. "They're still behind us!" Lily shouted over the roar of the engine, her voice tight with fear. "I know," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the tension. "We need to make it to the next curve, and we'll lose them. I promise." The road ahead seemed endless, the twists and turns coming faster now. Lily's mind raced, trying to calculate the distance between them and the car behind. Every inch felt like a lifetime. She wanted to say something, anything to ease the panic creeping up her throat. But there were no words. Just the deafening sound of their car pushing through the night and the pursuing one inching closer. Then the road ahead curved sharply, the mountainside falling away into a steep drop. Sarah gritted her teeth, turning the wheel sharply, her hands moving with an almost practiced precision. The car slid, tires screeching as they barely managed to stay on the road. The headlights behind them flared as the other car tried to follow, but lost traction, skidding dangerously close to the cliffside before pulling back. "We're going to lose them," Lily whispered, breathless. "We have to." Sarah's eyes flickered to the rearview mirror, watching the other car's desperate attempt to stay close. "Not yet," she muttered, her voice tinged with something colder. "But we will." The car surged forward, the engine roaring louder than before. Sarah didn't speak again, her focus entirely on the road. The wind howled. Outside, the cold mountain air seeping through the cracks in the windows, but inside the car, everything felt strangely silent, almost suspended in time. Another series of sharp turns approached, but this time the headlights behind them faded. Sarah kept pressing on, her eyes scanning the road ahead. The chase was slowing, and Lily felt the first wave of relief wash over her, but she didn't dare relax. Not yet. Finally, after what felt like hours, Sarah took a sharp turn onto a hidden path that led further into the mountains. The gravel road was bumpy and uneven, the kind of road that no one would think to follow. And as Sarah drove further into the thick trees, the pursuing car's headlights disappeared entirely. "We lost them," Lily said, letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her body felt light, like the weight of the world had just been lifted off her shoulders. Sarah didn't respond, but Lily could see her exhale slowly, her body loosening slightly. The car slowed as they entered a small clearing, the trees surrounding them on all sides. Sarah parked the car behind a cluster of boulders, its engine dying down to a low hum. "Are they gone?" Lily asked, still unsure, her mind racing to process everything that had happened. Sarah took a deep breath, her face pale in the dim light. "For now, but they'll be back. I won't be able to keep running forever." Lily looked at her, her brow furrowed. "Then what do we do?" Sarah didn't answer immediately. She just sat there for a moment, her hand still gripping the steering wheel as if it was the only thing keeping her grounded. "We keep moving forward," she finally said, her voice quiet, almost detached. "We can't stay here for long. But there's a place, a cabin further up the trail. We'll stay there for the night. Rest. We'll figure out what comes next in the morning." Lily nodded, but she couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest. There was more to this than Sarah was saying. She could feel it. The weight of the secrets Sarah had kept hidden from her. The reason why they were on the run. Why the people from Sarah's past were coming for them. As they exited the car, the cold night air hit them like a wall. It was sharp, biting, and seemed to carry with it the weight of everything they were running from. The mountains loomed around them, quiet and ominous. Sarah led the way, her pace quick and purposeful. They walked through the trees. The only sounds the crunch of gravel beneath their feet and the occasional rustle of branches in the wind. The path was narrow, winding through thick forest. But Sarah moved with confidence. This wasn't the first time she'd been in the mountains, Lily realized. After a few minutes, they reached a small cabin nestled among the trees. It was simple, humble, and seemed out of place in the midst of such rugged terrain. There were no lights on, no signs of life except for the faint glow from a small chimney. Sarah turned to Lily, her expression now softer, though still tense. "Stay close," Sarah warned as she opened the door, revealing a small interior with a single fireplace and a table in the center. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. As Sarah secured the door behind them, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that they were no longer running just from the people who were chasing them. They were running from something deeper, something in Sarah's past that was far more dangerous than any physical threat. Sarah sank into a chair by the fireplace, her body exhausted from the tension of the escape. Her face, which had been hard and resolute just moments before, now seemed worn. There was a heaviness in her eyes that Lily had never seen before. Lily took a seat across from her, waiting for her to speak, to finally open up about everything that had been left unsaid. She couldn't stand the silence any longer. "Sarah," Lily said, her voice soft but firm, "what's really going on? What are we running from? Who are they?" Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, her hands folding in her lap. Then, with a sigh, she opened them, meeting Lily's gaze with a vulnerability that felt almost foreign. "They were the ones who made me, Lily," Sarah said, her voice low. "They gave me everything. The mansion, the wealth, the control. But nothing comes for free, not in this world. I made a deal with them long ago, a deal I thought I could control. But now they want more." "More?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "More than just me," Sarah replied, her voice thick with regret. "They want everything. And if I don't comply, they'll take you from me. They'll take everything I've worked for." Lily's chest tightened as the weight of Sarah's words sank in. They weren't just running from the past, they were running from a future that had already been written for them, and the only way out was through the darkness they were both trying so desperately to avoid. The cabin was silent, except for the crackling of the fire in the corner, its warmth casting flickering shadows against the walls. Lily sat still, her mind reeling from Sarah's confession. The weight of the words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. They weren't just running from some faceless threat. They were running from a life that had already been controlled by people who had all the power, all the leverage, and the price of their escape was Lily herself. Lily's stomach twisted as she tried to process everything. She had been so focused on survival, so consumed with the idea of leaving the world she had known behind, that she hadn't realized how deep Sarah's entanglement went. They weren't just on the run from people chasing them. They were running from an entire life that had been built on a series of dangerous deals. But as she looked at Sarah, sitting across from her by the fire, the raw pain in her eyes was undeniable. Sarah was caught in a trap of her own making, and Lily knew, deep down, that she couldn't leave her behind. They had come this far together, and no matter how dark the road ahead, they were in it together now. "You said they want more than just you," Lily said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What do they want with me?" Sarah hesitated, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames, as if she could find an answer there. When she spoke, her voice was low, almost as if she were speaking to herself rather than to Lily. "They see you as leverage," Sarah said, her words clipped, each one carrying a weight of guilt. "You're my weakness. They know that. I'm the only thing standing between them and whatever they want, and they think they can use you to get to me." Lily felt a shiver run down her spine. "What do they want from you, Sarah?" Sarah's expression hardened, her jaw clenching as she swallowed the bitterness rising in her throat. "Power. Control. More than I could ever give them. I was supposed to play the part of the perfect heiress, the perfect businesswoman, the perfect puppet. But I wanted more. I wanted to choose my own path, to make decisions on my own. And when I tried to pull away from them, to live my life on my terms..." She paused, her hands trembling slightly as she leaned forward, the firelight dancing in her eyes. "They made sure I couldn't. They tied me to their every move, and now they think they can control you too." Lily's heart pounded in her chest. The pieces were finally falling into place, but the puzzle was a terrifying one. Sarah hadn't just been running from a group of investors or business partners. She had been running from people who held her life, and now, Lily's, at their mercy. I won't let them have you, Lily said, her voice steady with newfound resolve. She had never been one for easy promises, but this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about defying the system that had tried to take away everything she had fought for. We'll figure out how to fight back. We can't let them control us. Not anymore. Sarah looked at her, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she let out a long breath, the tension in her shoulders easing just slightly. You're right, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. I've been running for so long, trying to protect you, trying to protect myself. But running is only a temporary solution. We can't keep hiding forever. We have to make them come to us, Lily. We have to take back control. But how? Lily asked, her voice laced with uncertainty. They've got so much power. They'll come after us, and we don't have a plan. Sarah's eyes flickered to the window, her gaze distant for a moment. Then she turned back to Lily, a spark of something fierce lighting up her face. We'll make a plan, Sarah said firmly. But not just any plan. We'll hit them where it hurts. They think they control everything, money, power, resources, but they don't have everything. They don't have us. They don't know what we're capable of. Lily nodded slowly, feeling the weight of Sarah's determination settle in her chest. For the first time since this all began, she felt like they were on the same page. She wasn't just a victim in this story. She was a part of it. And together, they would fight to take back their future. The following days were a blur of preparation. Sarah, ever the strategist, mapped out the resources they had left. The safe house, a few trusted contacts from her past, and a collection of old, hidden assets that she could tap into. Every move was calculated, every detail scrutinized. And though Lily was still processing the full depth of the danger they were in, she began to see the path forward taking shape. It wasn't just about running anymore. It was about fighting. It was about reclaiming what was theirs. But Sarah's past wasn't the only thing they had to contend with. As the days passed, Lily began to notice that the world outside the cabin had changed. The forest, once peaceful and isolated, began to feel suffocating. Shadows moved in the trees. At night, Lily would hear the faint sound of footsteps crunching in the snow, though she never saw anyone. One afternoon, as Sarah went over a set of documents in the dim light of the cabin, Lily walked outside for a moment of peace. The snow had begun to fall again, covering the earth in a thick white blanket. As she stood there, looking out at the horizon, she heard a noise, a rustle in the bushes behind her. She turned, her heart skipping a beat, but before she could move, a figure stepped out from behind a tree. The man was tall, his features obscured by the shadows, but his presence was unmistakable. Lily froze, her breath catching in her throat. Sarah Whitmore. The man's voice was low, calm, but it sent a chill down Lily's spine. You can't hide forever. Lily's pulse raced as the figure stepped closer, the faint gleam of metal reflecting in the dim light. He wasn't just any man. He was one of them. Stay inside, Lily whispered to herself. But it was too late. The man had seen her. Lily's heart raced as the figure stepped forward, his presence casting a long shadow over the snow-covered ground. She instinctively backed up toward the cabin, her hand brushing the cold wood of the door behind her. The man was getting closer, his cold eyes locked onto her. This was no mere threat. It was a warning that they couldn't run anymore. You're Sarah Whitmore, the man repeated, his voice low and controlled. You've made a mistake by coming here. We don't let traitors live, no matter who they are. Lily's mind raced. Traitor? She wasn't sure what this man was talking about, but she knew one thing for sure. He was here for Sarah. And if Sarah was in danger, so was she. Stay back, Lily said, trying to sound braver than she felt. She didn't know if the man would listen, but she had to try. Sarah's voice came from behind the door, sharp and commanding. "Lily, get inside, now." Before Lily could react, Sarah appeared in the doorway, her presence commanding. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The fear in her eyes had been replaced by something else. Resolve. "You've found us," Sarah said, her voice even but full of tension. "But I'm not the woman you think I am anymore, and neither is she." The man smirked, clearly unimpressed. "You're not in control here anymore, Sarah. You never were." Without warning, he reached for the gun at his belt, his movements swift and practiced. But Sarah was faster. In a blink, she had stepped forward, knocking the weapon out of his hand with a swift motion that seemed almost too practiced to be a coincidence. The man staggered back, shocked by her strength and quickness. "You've been following me for far too long," Sarah said, her voice cold, unforgiving. "And you're not going to take anything from me anymore." Lily watched in awe as Sarah stood between her and the man, her body a shield. The world outside seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them locked in a silent, tense standoff. But then, Sarah turned to Lily, her eyes softening just for a moment. "Get inside," she said, her tone more urgent now. "We're done running. We end this today." Lily nodded, fear and admiration intertwining within her. She ducked back into the cabin, not daring to look back. She had faith in Sarah, more than she ever thought possible. As she closed the door behind her, she heard the muffled sounds of a struggle, grunts, the clatter of metal against the ground. The door shook as if under the force of some unseen conflict. Lily's breath hitched in her chest, but she stayed by the door, her hand trembling on the doorknob. Then silence. After what felt like an eternity, Sarah stepped through the door, her face pale but unbroken. She closed it behind her, locking it with a sharp click. "It's done," she said simply, her eyes meeting Lily's. "We're safe, for now." Lily stared at her, a sense of disbelief flooding through her. "What happened? Is he won't bother us again?" Sarah interrupted, her voice steady. "But the truth is, this is just the beginning. They'll send others. They'll come after us again." Lily felt a knot form in her stomach. "Then what do we do now?" Sarah stepped over to the small table in the cabin and picked up a map that had been lying there. She unfolded it with practiced hands, her eyes scanning the route carefully. There was no trace of fear in her expression anymore. Only determination. "We fight," Sarah said, her voice a calm, resolute declaration. "We fight back. This ends with us, not with them." Lily walked over, standing beside Sarah. She looked at the map, then up at her. "Are you sure?" Lily asked, her voice small but filled with a fire she hadn't known she had. "I'm sure," Sarah said, her eyes meeting Lily's, a flicker of something softer in her gaze. "I've been running from my past for too long. It's time to face it, and it's time to take control." The wind howled outside, the snow falling heavier now. But inside the cabin, amidst the flickering light of the fire and the map spread out before them, Lily felt something shift. They weren't just running anymore. They weren't hiding. They were ready to take back everything that had been stolen from them. Months later, the world had changed. Sarah and Lily, bound by a shared past and an uncertain future, had carved their own path through the chaos. The safe house had been just the beginning, no longer a hiding place, but a stronghold where they planned, where they prepared for the next phase of their fight. Sarah had become the leader she had always been destined to be, calculating, determined, and ruthless when she needed to be. Lily, once a frightened girl with no hope, had found her own strength. Together, they were unstoppable. The people who had once controlled Sarah's life, the ones who had tried to use Lily as leverage, had underestimated them. They were no longer the hunted. They had become the hunters. And as Sarah and Lily stood on the balcony of their new, hidden headquarters, the horizon in front of them filled with possibility, they knew that this was only the beginning. The shadows of their past would always linger, but they had learned one thing. They were no longer running. They were fighting for the future they had chosen.